Hey everyone, welcome back to SD Revolution. This is our weekly episode of SDRescue. I'm Austin Fuller, and I'm once again joined by my marvelous co-host, Grayson Fulbright.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is episode 2 of 2021, so excited that everyone's joining us today.
Grayson, tell the people, why should they listen?
Well, today we're going to be looking at an email that uses social proof. I think this might be the third email we've looked at so far that really tries to leverage some form of either name drop or testimonial to try to build rapport and really show credibility as a brand. So we're going to kind of break down the use of social proof a little bit more, talk about what this email could have done to improve it. And we're also going to talk about assumptions again, and what it really means when you are making an assumption towards a buyer and how they actually can receive it. Because sometimes you make assumptions that you don't expect the reaction. So we're going to go over assumptions today as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we've all sent, whether you're an SDR, an AE, somebody in business development, an account manager, a CSM, I think we've all sent a testimonial email. So I think that there's a ton to learn here if you're in marketing, sales, if you're anywhere in the revenue org, even sales ops, right? About the good ways, what is and what isn't working in the current state of using testimonials and social proof in email. So let's jump into it here. I'm going to grab this. All right, here's how the email starts out. Hey Austin, as a firm focused on growth, Nuarx needs a solid plan. Nuarx fits the profile of B2B tech, software, and consulting firms we've generated tons of revenue for. P.S. So they put the company's name there. So P.S. This company, who's a Microsoft, HP, Cisco partner, head of marketing, said, when our monthly pipeline grew by 5 million, I was sold on professionals managing our content and automation. Their company brought in over 150 million in qualified sales opportunities. I'm confident I can help Nuarx increase leads and revenue by 3x while eliminating the hidden blockages which are currently limiting your leads. How about 10 minutes on Wednesday? Okay. So for me, this email, it breaks a fundamental rule that Grayson has, and I myself as well, of going in too many directions initially, right? I mean, the testimonial is obviously the meat of this email, but it talks about needing a plan, and then in the footer, hidden blockages and 3xing revenue, and then there's a testimonial in the middle. So I mean, it's kind of three different topics within, in the copywriting realm. If you're looking at this from a copy perspective, he's really starting. This is an email going in 3 different directions.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one thing to note here is that they're trying to kind of compose themselves as somebody who intimately knows about Nuarx's situation. And what really disappoints me about the email is that they say that Nuarx fits the profile of, and yet they don't do the follow through to just research what niche that Nuarx is actually in. I think this email would have been like turned on a dime different if they put a little bit of effort into the personalization to actually show you as the reader, like, hey, I actually know about Nuarx as an account. I've done my research. This is definitely relevant for you. Instead, I feel like for most readers, especially for you, Austin, because of like the industry matchup, that this is kind of where I think it would lose people. Because like they start off the bat with an assumption that A, we're a firm focused on growth, and then B, we need a plan, as if we don't have one. And so if you're going to make claims like that and kind of come in and be a disruptor, you need to make sure that you know what you're talking about, who you're talking about, and like why it's being mentioned. And so you need to focus on credibility when you're reaching out to people cold, and always be aware of how you're coming across, because these are strangers that likely have never heard of you or your brand before. And so that's the first call out I wanted to make, is when you're using assumptions, you got to be careful about what you actually use them for. And doing something like a generic, oh, you fit the profile of these three very broad, very different industries. Like that just doesn't cut it. It's clearly generic.
Yes, and so here's the other thing too, and that I think they might be doing as well. I mean, this is really, really generic, but so how I started my career with credibility was always to make yourself seem as large, as broad, and as popular as possible. Like, and when I mean popular, I mean like mainly that was talking about how many total customers you had. You know, like sort of like this bandwagon type message. I remember the decks that I had as an SDR, and then as an AE, my first AE role and my deck as in my first SDR role. I remember the first 3 slides, were all about where the company was located, why, you know, who, not even who in their industry, just everybody that used us, how many customers we had, and what industries we covered. And they wanted you to list all the industries. We help people in this sector, this sector, this sector, this sector. Because to make you seem like some enormous gargantuan company, even though everyone knows we're not on the Inc. 500, the Fortune 500 list. And I thought it was so interesting that that's how social proof is being played. And so I'm just wondering here if A, it could either be that you're super generic and you're just firing off industry titles, which is actually very likely, or B, they're trying to say, hey, look, we help tech, we help B2B tech, we help software, we help consultants. Because I will say that you can't really tell which one NewArcs is, because we do have divisions of consulting and of software. But this is obviously really generic. But I just know that there's people out there who fire off, hey, we help people in this industry, this industry, this industry, because I did it. It's a much smaller practice now than it was when I was first starting my career, because we've learned that data has happened and the industry's moved on. But I do know that for a fact people try to make themselves seem as big as possible, and that's the first fallacy of social proof, I think.
Yeah. To kind of close out this thought and go over towards the bottom section where they're using assumptions, I think this one is really disappointing, because I feel like any person in your role, in your persona, Austin, which is like you are in sales leadership, you've likely been in a sales career for a while, you kind of know what you're doing. I think most people would recognize 3x leads and 3x revenue as a pretty sharp promise. Something that you would kind of be like, oh yeah, you think like everything we've got going on, all the people I've hired, me, myself, and my other leaders, you think that like you alone can walk in and just 3x what we're doing. I think when you're making promises to people and when you're trying to pitch value, you need to be careful about how you're framing the value. There's a difference between saying, hey, we do this and I noticed a few changes that might help and I'd love to show you in case you want to do it, and saying, hey, this thing's wrong with you and you're missing this and you need this, and like I can show you how you can do wildly better than you're currently doing. We talk about this a lot with assumptions about how it's received, and I think if you're going to say something like, hey, I'm confident I can help you do this while eliminating this thing currently limiting your business, if you're going to use that sort of format, you need to be careful about what promise you're actually making. I personally, and Austin, let me know your thoughts on this. I personally read that section and was like, credibility gone. Like you walk in, the first thing you say is you don't think that our team has a plan. And then you end by essentially saying like you can 3x what we're doing while still maintaining like this position that like we are doing something wrong. What are your thoughts about it, Austin?
Yeah, so it's the reason I think credibility evaporates at that point. I mean, it already evaporated in the first line, but I mean the nail in the coffin here for sure is the 3x and eliminating the hidden blockages that are limiting your leads, right? I mean, this whole sentence is, I don't want to say arrogant, but it's presumptuous, right? I mean, this isn't I think this is the daddy assumption we've had on the show. I really do. Dude, this is a big assumption to email a decision maker, and not that I'm some super crazy executive, but like to email somebody that you think is a buyer and to say, hey, you spend a ton of money and a ton of time and effort all day long, actually. You have no clue what you're doing. I can do triple what you do. Dude, That takes some massive ignorance or a massive ego. And you know, and I look at it like this: people that are really good, really skilled professionals, don't ever have to come flat out and tell you how good they are. Most of the time. I mean, there are things that need advertising. I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying they don't have to say up front how good they are. They let the results and other people speak for themselves, right? Like LeBron doesn't need to get on Twitter every day and remind everybody, hey guys, I'm really good at basketball. It speaks for itself. He has a reputation. And I think people especially smaller companies or startups or consulting firms, they struggle with this a lot because they're like, well, you know, my customers don't really want to share exactly how we've done what they've done for them, especially people in marketing, right? And stuff like that when you're doing stuff that, you know, is like a successful approach or your secret sauce or how somebody's doing something. And so, I mean, it's a difficult place for them to be in, but I would just say that if you're sending emails to people saying, hey, look how good we are, that's why I think the inverse of this, you know, people sending screenshots of customers talking about how good you are or saying things are much more effective, because it's somebody else saying it, right? No one believes, if I tell you that I'm the strongest person in the world or whatever, that, you know, then it's up to me to go then and prove it. The immediate reaction is disbelief whenever I make a bold claim to somebody. But if someone else makes a claim about somebody else that appears independent, right? This is why, you know, the Fire Festival and all that stuff and influencer marketing and stuff got cranked down on, because it's really effective to have a third party talk about you. But this email, ironically, is a first party talking about themselves that then uses a third party to reinforce it, I guess. It's not very well formulated, but I think, you know, all the first party talk really deludes and disarms the third party talking about them.
Yeah, I think so. Social proof, I think I mentioned this in the last episode that we talked about social proof, but basically social proof can be used in many stages of the sales process. And how you actually use it is very important. There's a difference between kind of sharing a targeted case study with a person who is evaluating you as a vendor and trying to decide whether they want to close and get buy-in with their team members. That's a whole different ball game from sending a cold email to someone who's never heard of you before. You haven't gotten on a discovery call with them. And those two are two different uses of social proof. One of them is built on actually trying to drive urgency, to validate credibility, and this one is about building curiosity. I think what this person did wrong is really they treated this cold email as if, like, once they put this PS in there, deal closed. Like, they acted like they were trying to put in something that's just going to knock them dead. And that's not how testimonials tend to be received in initial conversations. Testimonials are very useful inside the sales process, but you can't just present them to a cold lead that you haven't talked to before as if they're in the sales process. You can't just say, like, hey, I think you're doing this wrong and we can help you do it better. How? Listen to this person, blank. So you want to get on a call? Like that. That's very presumptuous, like Austin was saying, but most importantly, it's misinterpreting the use of social proof at that stage of the sales process. You're trying to start the conversation. You're trying to build curiosity and grow this idea of credibility and authority with your brand. And so how do you do that? Well, you tell stories with it. You position use cases and relatable situations and experiences that the buyer can then absorb and use it to self-identify and say, oh, wow, I really resonate with that. Instead, what I think this recipient or what this seller focused on is just trying to drop something into, quote, increase conversion rates or, quote, increase reply rates. And I think that is the wrong use of testimonials and of social proof. If you're going to use it, have a very specific purpose for it, and also have the email built around it. I am a little disappointed that this is the first email I think I've ever seen in my life that had the use of a PS right in the middle of the email.
PS in the body before the signature. It's incredible. So, hey, I agree with everything you said there. I think I love what you said about the point of a prospecting email is to build the curiosity, right? To get them to want to have a discovery call with you. Whereas a test, and look, I'm not going to fault this guy 100% because guess what? This is how I was trained when I was an SDR and an AE. We were given hyperlinks to YouTube videos, unlisted YouTube videos that marketing provided. And they said, hey, put these, somewhere after the first couple emails if they haven't responded. And look, and look, is it an old school way of doing stuff? Absolutely. But I'm saying that I firsthand received the training to do this exact thing, and I didn't know better that it was wrong, or why it didn't work. Why I was like, man, why aren't people watching these videos about how good we are? Fast forward 10 years, we've learned some stuff. So anyway, I think that's a really great point, is that, we want to tell stories, we want to invoke curiosity, and the other thing is the CTA is really bold. How about 10 minutes on Wednesday? Very, very assumptive, very casual, almost cocky. So it just reflects the whole attitude of the email, right? And no, how about 10 minutes? No, you don't get the 10 minutes. We can go on to the rewrite here. So I rewrote this one this week. Grayson got a break. We flip-flop every week. So I'm actually hoping for Grayson to help rewrite this as well and improve it, get some feedback from him and make it even better. But I'll go ahead and read it here just to intro everybody to how to... I even kept the testimonial the exact same, just copied and pasted it to not cheat. But I will agree with Grayson that I think that the type of testimonial that you share does need to change based on the person you're reaching out to and what stage they're at in the sales process. So, hi, Austin. I'd like to tell you about an IT services company with annual revenues of $30 million and 107 employees. No, it's not NewArcs. Company A needed to expand to new markets, but they couldn't create content with enough relevance to generate qualified sales opportunities, and the messaging their salespeople were using wasn't resonating. Here's what their head of marketing said after they brought us in to help. When our monthly pipeline grew by $5 million, I was sold on professionals managing our content and automation. The seller's company brought in over $150 million in qualified sales opportunities. Would results like these be worth exploring for NewArcs? What do you think, Grayson?
I love it, and I'll tell you why. You turned it into a story, and you pretty much didn't deviate away from the type of email that the original is, but you used the assumptions through this company story rather than pointing out, hey, NewArcs, you need a plan. Hey, NewArcs, you're missing out on leads. Instead, you're still kind of bringing the same message, similar message, but you're framing it through a story that's not about them, so that they can be a third-party viewer outside of the box, and it's their career and their reputation isn't on the line by reading this and agreeing to any of it. And I think that's very important. It's a stark difference from the original email. And I also have to give you kudos, Austin, for really getting targeted in terms of how you position the pain points and how you're actually talking about this story. I love the pain points that you actually brought in. I think it was smart of you to kind of flesh that out of the rewrite, because to be honest, those are two great pains that I think the average reader wouldn't have gotten from the original email. And finally, I do really like that you kind of made a play on what people tend to do with intros, where they're like, hey, like, I noticed that you have 30 employees and you're the IT director at NewArcs, right? You kind of made a play on it by making it seem like they're coming in to tell a story about them, but then you're like, nah, just kidding, which is humor, right? And humor used in the right ways can really, really lower the shields of prospects who are just interacting with your emails for the first time. So overall, I'd say this is a really good use of a couple of different tactics to turn pretty much a similar email into something much better and I think much more structured, congruent.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, I mean, the humor part in the front, I get a lot of those where it's like, are you this company or doing this role? And I think that if you're in marketing or sales, I get the reader to build an assumption, and then I flip the assumption on its head and say, nope, it's not actually what you're expecting. I build the expectation of one thing, and then that's not actually what it is. That's one way to build curiosity, right? Is to have the reader have an expectation and then do the opposite of what's expected. There's a bunch of other ways, but I just look at and the one part that I don't really like is going to the problem, going to and then jumping to the testimonial. Where what I would like, and because it's like the beginning and then the end, and it forgoes the middle. I mean, in some cases that might work. Like they might meet with you to find out the middle to their own story, I guess. So that can work in certain situations. But I actually think what would be better is if the testimonial was more of the middle, like explaining more of the problem and how they discovered stuff. Because I think something that we don't get as sellers, right? So when the original email says, hey, you need a plan. I think everyone has a plan, but what actually might, the vendor actually probably sat down with them and figured out, oh, hey, you don't really have a plan the way we plan, right? It's perceived differently. But the problem is that the reader is going to assume they have a plan, but until they meet with you, they won't discover that. And the problems that the buyer has look differently to the buyer as they do than they do to the seller, if that makes sense, right? Like, you're seeing two things you might be looking at the same thing and you just think it's something different. I know I've had that experience as a seller and as a buyer where the seller explains something to me and they're thinking about something in a way that I've never thought of before.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And to kind of go back to your comment on the testimonial, I think there's no problem with keeping it in there. I think what I would have focused on in the rewrite is really adjusting who you're talking to and what you're wanting to actually put out in the testimonial or in the social proof. And to me, what I would think about is like, well, if this is a cold email to try to start an initial conversation, you don't really know what stage of the buying cycle they're in. They might be hot and ready for content and automation. They might not have any idea what content and automation have to do with each other. And so maybe what I would have done is really position more on the benefits of having help with content and kind of automating that process, because then you're going to catch more top of funnel leads, which is what you end up doing in outbound anyway. A majority of leads are not even aware they have a problem, or they think that they've got the solution and they just don't see it the right way. And so with this testimonial, I think it's good because it's, hey, look at us, party, we're so credible. But I think what you really need to get out of it is like, what idea are you trying to really prove with either data or a story when you're quoting these different people? And I think in this situation, I would be more focused on trying to sell the idea of actually growing content and automating content to drive sales.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's much more appropriate for a top of the funnel audience. And I think if that's one thing to take away here is like, hey, if you're an SDR, you're a salesperson, CSM, you need different levels of testimonial. And guess what? It can be accomplished in the same interview. That's the best part. Is most people just clip the end part where they're like, oh yeah, they're the best company ever. I can't believe where we've come from before we were with them. It's amazing. I don't know what we were thinking, not paying them money. That's the part they always clip and share. But, if you actually get them to tell the whole story of, okay, so where were you before? What was going on? And what was it like exploring that process? What was it like during the buying process? And as they talk and tell you how they evaluated their problems, I mean, that's where the gold mine for prospecting is, because that's where the insights are, from the perspective of the buyer, not from the seller. And so I think that if you do a case study interview, and you as a salesperson can do this in your territory, find your customers, give them a call, or have the account manager or CSM in your territory, give them a call and do an interview like that, right? And clip that part and then use that in your emails. It's going to be way, way better than sending out the here's the results email. People assume they know what the results are going to be in the case study are going to be good. What people don't get from case studies is how did you get to that, right? And what were the problems? Are those people's problems like mine? Because if they are, then I'm just going to assume I can get to the end result.
Right. Yeah, I think I find, because I've done full cycle sales and my own marketing for a while, and I found that I use different forms of kind of the same assets and conversations that I gather from my customers throughout the sales process. And you're right. What I found as kind of like a bootstrap startup sailor, I'm always scrappy, right? I'll take all of the assets that I have, and I'll do some sort of a soft A/B test where over time I figure out that this set of quotes or this set of stories really works for people that are top of funnel initial conversations, and then I find that this set are really good for the follow-up after this discovery call to kind of build credibility, gain momentum, and then I'll have a set for closing where it's like this is trying to just like get people over the edge. And I think if you step back as a seller and just look at all of the things that either marketing has put out for you or that customers have given to you to use in your sales process, you'll find some patterns if you look hard enough that say, okay, maybe this one might actually be a better fit to put in my cold email. And maybe this one right here, this quote about bringing 150 million in qualified sales opportunities, maybe that one I should place like maybe middle or like kind of bottom of the funnel. I think if you get that wrapped around your head, you can really make a lot of use out of just a few assets from a marketing team. And that also makes you a much better seller, because the better equipped you are, the more collateral that you have to share, then it's less on you as a person, it's more on your brand and the actual messaging that you're putting out.
Dude, that's a really good tip. So, I mean, I think that's important. I read something from somebody else on LinkedIn or something where they make like a big spreadsheet of like their ideal, so their ICP and they layer in different pieces of content for different stages. They make just like a reference, a spreadsheet that says, okay, if this person is at this point in this industry, go here. Because they had multiple industries, I think. They had multiple segments that they went after, so they had to organize content for one industry here and for another industry here. I think that's super smart. If you have if you're doing, it's beginning of the year, if you want to get organized as an SDR and really make your prospecting efforts simple, like I would do what Grayson said and catalog your different content as it relates to different stages of the sales process and where they're at, and then you'll have a very organized, easy place to find different assets during the sales process. And speeds everything. The faster you can get to that stuff and the more you can make it contextual and relevant, the better your results are going to be. I think that's an awesome tip. I think we're just about at the top of the hour. If we want to wrap up, Grayson, do you want to tell everybody about our new show format? Maybe we do that for the last couple minutes, and we wrap.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us today on YouTube Live on our channel. So this will actually be our last YouTube Live recording. So we're going to be doing it next week on Zoom. We'll be sending out an invite on LinkedIn. And if you're already a member, we can send you a link as well so that you can join us. But still, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube if you haven't already, because we will be posting all of the episodes to YouTube anyway after they're live. And let us know if you have messaging that you want us to check out, if you have topics that you want to dive into, or maybe if you just have an industry that you want us to analyze and kind of conceptualize selling into it. We'd love to get your feedback.
Thank you, everybody. We'll catch you next week in our live Zoom meeting. You can get all the details at LinkedIn. Thanks so much.